for humans to be able to realize who they are and what they can become and to have the opportunity to pursue that. I just think human life is very valuable. Every person in the world, right, has skills and abilities and interests and stuff. And I just think people should be allowed to do that. So my books tell stories of the World War II, and they are stories that are actually really kind of uplifting in a way. So the first novel, real quickly, is called Lost Souls of Leningrad, and it's set in former Leningrad. Most people don't know this bit of World War II history, but history buffs do know that the Germans blockaded the city of Leningrad in 1941, and for 2.5 years they had the city cut off from the entire world, and they starved over 1 million civilians to death during this siege, this blockade. It's the greatest, really, civilian tragedy in wartime history. Yeah, really, really horrible event. And it's hardly ever written about because it's so grim. And so I really wanted to write a book about it. Actually, when I was a student in Moscow, we went to Leningrad for a few days, and they took us to the Piskarevskaya Cemetery, which is a memorial cemetery to those who died during the siege. And there are almost a 500,000 unknowns, mass graves, huge mass graves that look like raised beds. I mean, just to think, whole families just vanished from the face of the earth. No one left to remember them. Anyway, I was 21 years old, and it was a really moving a couple of hours for me. And so when I did decide to write, I knew I wanted to write about that episode. And this was 40 years later, but I knew I wanted to write about it. And what I did in it is I have 4 protagonists, so 4 main characters, a grandmother and granddaughter who are trapped in the city, and the men they love are on the outside. And what the book does is it touches on all sorts of things that happened during the siege, not just the starvation, not just the cold, not all just the horrible things, but the uplifting things, like the administrator of the state library, which is in central St. Petersburg today, then central Leningrad. She kept it open during the siege every day. It was open. People came in and sat around, got so small they had no electricity. They just sat around one little table with candles, but it uplifted those few people who came in every day. 39 of the schools stayed open during the siege, and that gave children a place to go besides sitting at home in a freezing cold apartment where there's nothing to eat. It gave them some sense of normalcy, right? So there were all kinds of things that went on during the siege that were really, really uplifting things. Yeah, I had a friend who said it's a war story where compassion is the unsung hero. So
I mean, that's a really good way of putting it, actually.
yeah, yeah.
When you kind
So
of think about it like that.
yeah. And then my second book, what the second book, so it's become a trilogy. So that grandmother and granddaughter, the woman in between them, the communist secret is her story during the war. And she ends up in occupied Russia, in occupied territory under German jurisdiction. And I kind of wanted to write about occupation because huge sections of the former Soviet Union were occupied by Nazi Germany during the war. And no one ever writes about it. You never hear
I didn't
very
really
much
think about
about
it. I mean,
it. Yeah.
heard about it, but I never really thought about it
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
just said it, you know?
I mean, yeah, mostly we know about Stalingrad because that was the big battle that
Right.
saved the world, kind of. But I wanted to write a little bit about something about occupation and also to include something about partisans. A lot has been written about partisan forces in Europe and Italy and France and everywhere, right? But not much about in Russia. And I wanted to cover a little bit of that. So this is really, she's a complicated character. She's a selfish woman, actually, who's done some not such great things in her life. And going through the war helps her come to terms with her own failings and with the failings of her government. So that's the communist secret. And you don't have to have read one; they stand alone completely. So anyway,